car crashes, defective products, dangerous drugs, injuries, and abuse. Across the state of Alabama, the attorneys, proudly sponsored by the law firm of Hollis, Wright, are here to serve you. Your tough legal questions answered by our experts with the attorneys of Hollis, Wright.
Hello and welcome to the attorneys. Here's something I want you to consider. When you are in an accident, always seek treatment for your injuries. Why? Because an injury attorney can help you if there's no evidence of injury or damages. That's something I want you to know right on the top end of this. I'm Art Franklin. Welcome to this edition of The Attorneys. That is John Spade right there from Hollis, Wright, and Clay. And we have a very, very special guest in the studio with us. We want to welcome Gloria Sellers to the show.
Hi, guys.
How you doing?
So happy to be here. Thank you.
We're happy to have you, Gloria. And I'm excited about the show that we're going to have for the viewers tonight. Something that certainly is kind of near and dear to my heart and what our firm does, and that's uninsured and underinsured motorist law, and it can kind of get a little bit confused at times, and so I think we've got a good opportunity here to explain all that to the viewers. But before we jump into everything, feel free to tell viewers a little bit about you, your practice, and kind of a day in the life.
Sure. So my name is attorney Gloria Sellers, of course. My practice is Sellers Law Group here in Birmingham, Alabama is where we're based out of. Of course, we are kind of like you, John. We are here to help injured victims all over the state of Alabama. And so what we do, we deal with the insurance companies when it comes to injured victims, getting them the settlements that they deserve, basically. Sometimes that means we have to be a little fighting spirit with the insurance company, but we get the job done. So a day in the life of me is talking to clients who, like I said, call from all over Alabama, whether it's car accidents, slip and falls, sometimes dealing with doctor injuries. We talk with them, we see what we can do for them, and we take their cases to the next steps and until we get them recovered with settlements.
That's good stuff.
Absolutely.
We knew it was going to be a great show having you on board with us today. But let's talk about understanding what is uninsured and underinsured coverage.
Sure. So sometimes uninsured motorists and underinsured motorists can be, like John said, a little confusing. So uninsured motorists and underinsured motorists is a policy, really a coverage that you can add to your auto policy that will protect you against, one, drivers who are driving with no active policies on their cars and cause you injuries. Or it could be a situation where with underinsured motorists, where it's a situation where the person who actually hit you did not have enough coverage to cover your medical bills, your pain and suffering, and things of that nature.
So that's not in place automatically. That's something you really have to ask for when you get in.
Yeah, so one sneaky thing that the auto policy insurance companies do, they will slide you in a rejection form when you're going to buy auto policy. So you want to make sure that you're paying attention when you're going to purchase auto policy for your car and ask for uninsured motorist and underinsured motorist coverage. Otherwise, the insurance company are just sliding you documents and you're signing, and you could reject that without even knowing.
Wow.
Yeah, Alabama is one of the few states where you have to have a written rejection of underinsured motorists, but uninsured and underinsured. But you're absolutely right. You got to be careful in what you're doing. What I usually will tell clients is, underinsured motorist coverage is kind of that rainy day coverage. Yes. It seems odd that you're making a claim on your own insurance,
right?
But if you don't have it, you're going to wish that you did. And most times, the amount of money that you're paying for that coverage is really pretty low.
Minimum, yeah.
But if you don't have it, you could be in a really, really bad place if the other driver doesn't have insurance.
Absolutely.
Or certainly doesn't have enough insurance.
Yes.
What are some of the limits of liability insurance and then underinsured motorist insurance for the state of Alabama?
So Alabama is one of those states where they only require drivers to have $25,000 in liability coverage. And I tell anybody with $25,000 liability coverage, if you're seriously injured by someone who only have that minimum policy, you're going to pretty much need uninsured motorist coverage because a visit to the ER is most times 3 times $25,000 when you have a very serious injury. So even with the $25,000 liability, you can go add uninsured motorist coverage, just like you said, for a minimum amount, and it starts at $25,000. However, as an attorney who does this, I would advise anyone to at least have $100,000 in uninsured motorist coverage on their own personal vehicle.
And it really is a very low monthly or per premium cost. And in the event that you do have a catastrophic injury and you're in the hospital for days or weeks or have to have surgery, you're going to need that coverage there.
Yes.
And have it in place. So we've talked about kind of what is uninsured, what is underinsured
Yes.
motorist coverage. Now, say I have multiple vehicles.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Explain to our viewers, if I've got 3 or 4 cars on and all insured with the same insurance company under the same
Yes.
policy.
Yes.
Can I just access one of those, or can I access multiple of those?
So, as a person who is what we call a household relative, in that household, if it's a situation where you're seriously injured and you need to tap into uninsured motorist or underinsured motorist coverage, you can do what we call stacking. And so stacking is whatever coverage is available on each one of those vehicles under that policy, you're able to ask the insurance company, really demand, in my word, the insurance company to provide that coverage for your injuries, your medical bills, pain and suffering, and future expenses that you may come across.
And all of this sounds like insurance coverage that you really need to have.
Absolutely.
But what are you finding when you're dealing with most of your clients? Are you finding that most people, they sign that reject page, or do most people have this?
So what I find, unfortunately, is most people are rejecting it without even knowing. So you want to make sure that when you're going down and purchasing auto policies, you are vocal about, I need this coverage, uninsured motorist coverage on my policy today. And if you don't have it today, run down, call your agent, and get it today, because you're going to need it in Alabama.
So you can add it later in the process? Okay.
You can.
Mm-hmm.
And another thing that you're seeing, I'm sure, Gloria, you're seeing this in your practice as well. There's a lot of drivers, even though you're required to have the state minimum of $25,000 in liability coverage, unfortunately, there's a lot of drivers driving around that don't have any coverage. They've either let their policy lapse or never had a policy to begin with, and that can be a big issue as well. And then you can access the uninsured motorist if you have it, if you ask for it.
Right. And one thing a lot of people worry about is that, well, if I tap into this uninsured motorist coverage or uninsured motorist coverage for my accident, does that make my premium go up? And honestly, it does not, because if you're paying this premium every month, I mean, it's something that you're paying for anyway. So it's not a situation where you're penalized for tapping into a coverage that you're paying for anyway. So no, your insurance premium should not go up. I mean, if you're concerned about it, you could talk to your insurance agent about it. But I definitely, once again, say you need to get uninsured motorist coverage.
Wow, you have really brought out some important information from the start, and we're just getting started talking with you here on this edition of The Attorney. So if you don't have that, you better check your policy right now. I think I'll call my wife and make sure that we've got that in place. Also, if you have any other questions that you want to be answered by a legal professional, all you have to do is call someone from Hollis, Wright, and Clay right now. That number, 1-844-LAW-TALK. That call is free. That call is confidential, but we have much more to talk about with Gloria Sellers as our special guest here on The Attorneys. We'll take a break, and we'll be back after this.
I'm Josh Wright with the law firm of Hollis Wright, a personal injury law firm, and thank you for watching The Attorneys. We hope you, a friend, or a loved one never needs legal counsel for a case. But if you do, the goal of the show is simple: to provide answers and legal counsel when you need it the most. Your call to the show is free and off air. So if you have questions specific to the show or related to other accident or injury topics, call, email, or text us. You can also follow us on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and YouTube, or go to hollis-wright.com and click on the Contact Us button. We know your time is valuable, so thank you for spending it with us and watching The Attorneys.
The attorneys, proudly sponsored by the law firm of Hollis, Wright, are here to serve you.
When we started the show 8 years ago, my hope was we would be able to do what we do best, which is to help people answer real-world legal-related issues they have in their life.
People oftentimes are confronting various legal issues and problems in their lives that range across the gamut of legal practice areas. Bankruptcy, criminal law, family law, just to name a few. And to be able to have a 30-minute platform or format to where we can just cover various legal topics once a week, that's obviously the primary focus of the show.
That we would be able to use the resources of the many lawyers we have at this law firm to create a plan that had a lasting impact that also gave back to the community at the same time. And I think we've done just that with the attorneys.
Did you know we have nearly 100 5-star reviews on Google? That's because our clients like the work we do. If you've been injured in an accident, we are here to help. Give us a call for a free consultation. At Hollis Wright, your result matters.
Welcome back to the attorneys. Now, throughout the show, you may have noticed some information on your screen. I invite you to check that information out. It is useful information. It is worth the read. So make sure you check that out. Something else I want you to do, go to Hollis, Wright, and Clay social media platforms, whether it's Twitter, Facebook, Instagram. There's good information there, and always posting something that will make a difference in your life. Today, we're talking about uninsured and underinsured motorist coverage, and Gloria Sellers is our special guest, and we really got out the gate with some good information, but we've got another level to take it to.
Yes.
Absolutely, and we're talking about uninsured, underinsured motorist coverage.
Yeah.
And again, just emphasizing, if you don't have it, go get it. What coverage you have at the time of the accident, that's what matters. And so if something happens afterwards and you realize you don't have it, you can't rewind the clock. So if you don't have it, check it now, and then call your insurance agent tomorrow morning and make sure that coverage is added. Now, Gloria, what happens, say I'm a passenger in a vehicle, is there any way, and my driver's not at fault, somebody, say I'm riding with somebody, to go get something to eat, and we get rear-ended.
Yes.
Can UM or UIM, uninsured, underinsured motorists, can that come into play in that situation as me, the passenger?
Yes, so this is actually a twofold answer, okay? So if you're a passenger in a vehicle and you've been injured, and it's a situation where the person who caused the accident did not have active insurance, well, what's going to be primary is the uninsured motorist coverage policy of that driver that you're riding with as a passenger. So that vehicle is what we consider as personal injury lawyers primary. Okay. So you can tap into that insurance. Now, somewhat of the downside of that is that every passenger that's in that vehicle is entitled to that policy. So if there's more than 1, 2, 3 passengers, keep in mind that every single passenger in that vehicle more than likely is going to be fighting for that uninsured motorist coverage, which is why it's more important for you to have uninsured motorist coverage on your own personal policy, because that becomes secondary in the event that it's not enough in that vehicle.
So in that situation, you've got an uninsured driver that rear-ends you, you're accessing the uninsured motorist of the vehicle you're in, along with all the other passengers, and then you'd have an underinsured motorist claim against your own insurance.
So you see how that interchanges?
Absolutely. It can get very, very confusing, which is why I think it is very important to contact an attorney, because there's a lot of procedural hurdles that you've got to go through, and it's just good to have somebody who, like yourself, is very well versed in this area of the law. Now, what happens if I'm the passenger in a vehicle and my driver rear ends somebody, or my driver drives off the road or causes an accident and I'm injured? Does UIM, does it come into play in that scenario?
So the only way that you'll be able to pursue a claim for your injuries if you were a passenger in a vehicle where that driver was considered to be at fault, it has to pass what we call the guest passenger statute. And there are elements tricky elements to the guest passenger statute here in Alabama. And one of those elements is that you have to prove that that driver was intentional, that they were reckless, and that behavior led to that accident actually happening. And that's kind of hard because that's a very high bar to prove that a driver was intentional trying to cause that accident or their actions caused that accident. And another thing, which is another tricky little element, is that sometimes we have to prove that that passenger paid for that ride.
The benefit test.
Yes.
That's right.
Yes. So it's kind of tricky sometimes, but once again, you can get an attorney to look at it, and it could be a situation where we can get past those elements.
And then if you are able to get around that guest passenger statute, which is unique to Alabama,
Yes.
If you're able to get around that, then you could access.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely.
And so in situations like that, should you automatically file a claim if you've been injured in that accident? Just automatically do it?
I would, if I have very serious injuries, I would, absolutely. But I would call an attorney first.
Always.
But call Gloria first. It's always the best practice, and what we'll tell clients is, at the outset, we might not know the extent of the injuries. We might not
Right.
know. I don't have a crystal ball. I can't tell you, hey, in 2 months or in 6 months, you're going to be fine. There's not going to be any issues. We don't know.
Yeah.
And so whether we open up an uninsured or underinsured motorist claim on behalf of the client or just simply get the coverages, it's important to do that kind of analysis and that legwork on the front end so you know what you're dealing with.
Absolutely.
And you talk about the front end. So is this a time right now where everyone at home, you guys are watching this and you're listening to this and how important this is? Should they start going through policies, calling family and friends, or what should they be doing right now?
Definitely, there is a time period throughout the year where you're up for renewal for your auto policies. I would say during that time of renewal, make sure you're looking and making sure that uninsured motorist coverage is a part of your policy. That may be a great time for you to add it for minimum premium amount, but even if you're far away from that renewal period, definitely look at your policies and make sure you have uninsured motorist coverage.
Very good.
At a time like the present, Art.
I know. As soon as we get the break, trust me, I'm pulling up.
Hopefully your wife's watching. She's already on it.
She's absolutely on it indeed, because she does like you. Let's go through this and make sure that everything is in line and in order with what it should be. And I think that's what I'm taking from all of this, is that a lot of times we're not looking at the fine print. We're getting, policies, and you're like, sign this, check here, check there, because nobody wants to read all of the paperwork that's involved.
Absolutely.
But that would be a mistake.
That would definitely be a mistake, especially in Alabama.
All right. Well, keep it right there. We're not done yet. We still have more time with Gloria Sellers as we're talking about uninsured and underinsured coverage for our motorists out there as we talk about the accidents. Also want to remind you that as you're listening and watching this show today, you may have some questions that you want to pose to the attorneys at Hollis, Wright, and Clay. And it's very easy to do. Simply call 1-844-LAW-TALK. That call is free. It is confidential. On the other end of the line, when you call that number, you'll reach someone, and they are very willing to talk to you about anything that you want to talk about. It could be legal advice. It could be a question because you may want to find out what you should be doing if you don't have that coverage. Stick around. We're going to take a break, and then we'll come back and we'll wrap up with Gloria Sellers here on The Attorneys.
I'm Josh Wright with the law firm of Hollis, Wright. As with any industry, it's important in the legal world to hire an attorney that is knowledgeable and has a track record of success. But with so many attorneys out there and so many different types of cases, how does someone decide the right lawyer to hire? In this week's Legal 4-in-1, we're answering the question, what should I consider in hiring an attorney? In-state versus out-of-state, big firm or little firm, recommendations from friends or family, the internet or TV. With so many choices and so much information, it can be an overwhelming task trying to make the right decision. To complicate things, choosing a lawyer is an important and sometimes life-affecting decision and should not be taken lightly. So how do you select an attorney? First, do your research. Look the firm up on the internet. Learn about the cases they handle and the results they get. Second, find out what clients are saying about the firm. Many websites provide client testimonials or have a star ranking system. Use those to your advantage. And finally, talk with a lawyer from their office and ask them questions. Questions about the volume of cases they handle. Do they return phone calls? Are you just a number or a client that gets the attention you deserve? Please remember, your call, email, or text to the attorneys is free. All of us at Hollis Wright want to help answer your questions on real issues you face. Remember, a competent lawyer will respond to every question you send in. That's our pledge and promise to you. Thanks for watching The Attorneys. At Hollis Wright, we pride ourselves on having a bedside manner that's second to none. That means we listen more than we speak, and we return calls to current and potential clients. Our attorneys are standing by right now. At Hollis Wright, your result matters.
Welcome back to The Attorneys. We're so glad to have you with us. Want to remind you that you can reach someone from Hollis, Wright, and Clay at 818-444-LAW-TALK. And love for you to also follow Hollis, Wright, and Clay on all the social media channels on Twitter, whether they call it X, or whether you're on Instagram or Facebook as well. We're talking with Gloria Sellers, and throughout the show, we've been putting up different factoids, and people get information that we can show them. There's one I want to jump into. It says, do not accept an initial offer from an insurance company before, of course, speaking to an experienced injury attorney. Likewise, you should not sign any documents prior to speaking with an experienced attorney like John Spade and Gloria Sellers.
Absolutely. Most times after an accident, I cannot tell you how many times I've gotten calls from injured victims that say, hey, this insurance company has offered me $1,500. I need the money. I need it for a rental car, or I needed to pay a deductible, et cetera, et cetera. If they're offering you $1,500 prior to even seeing your medical bills, trust me, your claim is worth way more than that.
It's kind of that whole carrot and stick approach, and they'll kind of dangle that out in front of these, injured victims, and you've got medical bills that are piling up. You've got the uncertainty and unknown about the future, and I got to get back to work, and all of these questions, and it always is a very the initial phone calls and the first several days, weeks, and even month or so after an accident is always hectic. Because you have all these unknowns. You got the insurance company that's calling you and saying, hey, we'll pay you, $1,000, $1,500, $2,000. Just stop, take a breath. It's okay. You've got, in Alabama, if it's a personal injury claim, you've got 2 years from the date of the accident until you have to file a lawsuit. That's your statute of limitations. Now, for the uninsured and underinsured motorists, it's a little bit different because you're actually contracting with your insurance company for this coverage, right? So it's got a different statute.
So that is what we call a first-party claim versus a third-party claim. If you're pursuing someone else for the accident, that's a third-party claim. However, it's a situation where you're dealing strictly with your insurance company, it's a first-party claim. So that statute of limitation is actually 6 years versus 2 years.
So if they're offering you this, hey, this is ABC Insurance Company, we're going to give you $1,500 right now. That means you have no other claim after that if you take that money?
If you sign what we call a release form with the insurance company, every other claim is barred. You cannot pursue anything else. So let's say you accept the $1,500 initially, but then you come back and you realize, I got to have surgery. Well, unfortunately, you cannot pursue that driver or his insurance policy for anything else because you signed the release form.
Hang up the phone, call John Spade, call Gloria Sellers as we continue. Go ahead, John.
And just kind of to echo, it's amazing. I look at some of these releases, and at the first pass they might look very harmless, but then it's any and all claims you or your kids or anybody will ever have against this one individual or against this insurance company. So they're sneaky in that. It's just there's no pressure. You're not under a time crunch. Take a breath, take a beat, and then you can make an informed decision.
Absolutely.
We've talked about in an uninsured motorist situation, say you're a passenger in a car and you get rear-ended, the other person doesn't have insurance. There's also underinsured motorist coverage that we touched upon, I guess, at the beginning of the show. What's the procedure on how you would go about accessing that? Because you wouldn't go straight to your insurance company in that situation.
No.
What happens?
So in underinsured, it's just what it sounds like. It's a situation where the person who hit you did not have enough coverage. So let's give a scenario that you were involved in an accident, a 5-car pileup maybe, and everyone who was injured in each car was pursuing that one driver, okay?
The car, the back of the line that started everything?
Yes.
Okay.
So let's say that the driver only had what we call a $25,000/$50,000, which is the minimum limits in Alabama. Just keep that in mind. Everyone that was injured by that particular vehicle is going to be fighting for the $50,000 policy. Okay, so that's a lot of injuries, that's a lot of bodies that's fighting over that one policy. And so in that situation, you're going to want to tap into your underinsured motorist coverage, because remember I said it's not enough. The policy was not enough for you. However, if there's a lot of people with a lot of injuries and medical bills and it's only $50,000, that's where the attorney is going to have to come in and prove of that $50,000 what amount their client is actually entitled to. So that's a lot of groundwork that the attorney would have to do to prove what their client can get out of that $50,000. And then once you get that part of the piece of the pie done, that is when you pursue your uninsured motorist coverage.
So you got to exhaust that first layer first for the person who caused everything, and then you can make the claim. And so $50,000 per occurrence, $25,000 per person. So the most any one of those people could get was $25,000.
Yes.
And the most the insurance company for the driver is ever going to pay out is $50,000 for the entire accident, assuming there's not some extenuating bad faith circumstance or anything like that.
Yes, because keep in mind the person who caused the accident, their car is primary. Uninsured motorists and underinsured motorists is secondary.
Wow. And then determining the value. How is that done?
So most times that's a little trick question, because most time attorney could take a look at it. We have to see your medical bills. We have to see if there's a situation where you're going to have future therapy, surgery. And we also take in consideration what we call how is your quality of life affected. And we have to prove that in writing, pictures, so much groundwork goes into it. But the value is really one of those it depends situations.
It depends. And that's a good place to leave it. It depends. It depends on who you talk to. Call Gloria Sellers or call John Spade. Again, Gloria, we really, really do appreciate having you on the show.
Thank you for having me.
That's right. John, thank you again.
Yeah, yep. I'm glad to be here.
Always. And thank you at home for joining us on The Attorneys, and make sure you go ahead and make an appointment to catch us again next week for another edition of The Attorneys. I'm Mark Franklin. So long.
Thanks for watching The Attorneys, sponsored by Hollis Wright.